The strange moment arguments end. Some arguments don't end with agreement, they end with silence. And when someone suddenly stops arguing with you, it doesn't always mean you've won. Sometimes it means something else has quietly changed. Think about it. There was a time when every conversation with that person turned into a debate. They challenged your ideas. They pushed back. They explained their side again and again. But then something shifted. One day the argument simply stopped. Not because the issue was solved, not because they suddenly agreed, they just stopped responding. Short answers replaced long discussions. Debates turned into quiet nods, and the silence felt strange. Because arguments rarely disappear without a reason. The pattern. Many people recognize you bring up the same topic that used to start long debates. This time they simply say, okay, or if that's what you think. No explanation, no defense, no attempt to convince you. At first it feels like progress. The conflict is gone, but something else slowly becomes noticeable. The conversations feel calmer, but also more distant. Less energy, less investment. Psychology often describes this as emotional disengagement. The first hidden reason: mental exhaustion. Arguing requires mental energy. Every debate forces the brain to think quickly. How do I respond? What argument should I use? How do I defend my perspective? When the same disagreements repeat again and again, the brain eventually reaches a quiet conclusion. This discussion isn't going anywhere. And once that happens, continuing the argument feels pointless. So instead of fighting the same battle again, the mind chooses a different strategy: silence. The second reason: they believe nothing will change. Another reason arguments disappear is perceived futility. When someone explains their point many times but nothing changes, the brain adjusts its expectations. It stops seeing the conversation as productive. It becomes a loop, and humans naturally avoid loops that feel pointless. So the effort disappears. Not because the disagreement vanished, but because persuasion no longer seems possible. The power dynamic. Shift arguments are also connected to influence. When people debate with you, they are trying to shape the outcome. They believe their voice matters. But if someone begins to feel their influence doesn't change anything, they often stop competing in the conversation, not with anger, but with quiet withdrawal. From the outside, it looks like agreement, but internally, they have simply stopped trying to change your mind. When silence means emotional distance, sometimes silence signals something deeper. When people care strongly about a relationship, they argue because the outcome matters. But when emotional investment drops, the motivation to argue drops too. The disagreement becomes less important, the conversation becomes lighter, and the person simply lets things pass. What looks like peace can sometimes be distance. When silence is actually maturity. But silence is not always negative. Sometimes people stop arguing because they recognize that not every disagreement needs resolution. They learn that some differences simply exist. And instead of fighting every conversation, they allow space. In this case, silence isn't withdrawal, it's restraint. The real meaning of arguments. Ending. When someone stops arguing with you, several things might be happening. They may be mentally exhausted. They may believe persuasion is impossible. They may be protecting their energy. They may be accepting your differences. Or they may be quietly stepping back from the conflict. The same silence can carry many meanings. Your arguments are loud, but the psychology behind them is quiet. And when someone stops arguing with you, the silence can reveal something deeper about the conversation, the relationship, or the energy someone is willing to invest. Because sometimes the most revealing moment in a disagreement is the moment one person decides it's no longer worth continuing.